Let us prepare ourselves. If you put your hand over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And now over your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. And now just open over your heart and then extend out your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is actually the same one that I worked with 2 weeks ago, because we're in a little series now. And it's the spiritual truth that says that within every adversity, within every unpleasant circumstance, within every failure, within every ounce of physical pain, there is an equivalent benefit, an equal benefit. To how far down we go, that's how far up we can go as well. That's the spiritual truth that we've been working with. Now, most of us actually know that already. Anybody in here who's in recovery knows that the moment that we surrendered our egoic mind to our higher power, to our highest mind, then the seeds of equivalent benefit just began to fall all around us. We were just picking them up, and we're still picking them up. Those of us who've been in relationships that were completed before we were ready for them to be complete, that's the Sunday way of saying you got dumped. You know? If that should have happened to you, you know that within time you were able to find a seed of equivalent benefit in that experience to bring forth a better experience, one that was more respectful, was more passionate, was more glorious in your life if you were able to nurture that seed of equivalent benefit. Some of us have had failures in jobs, but we were able to somehow hear the words of Lord Buddha, who said the only two failures there ever are is the failure to begin and the failure to keep going in your life. Those are the only failures. And when we know those are the only failures, then the seeds of equivalent benefit are just everywhere for us to be picking up. And there may be some in the room, I certainly have gone through that experience of being that person who has been felt a disappointment. Maybe something happened to me and I just got mad about it. I just got mad and I couldn't find anything. I kind of got stuck in mad. I call mad making your advances delayed. That's what mad is, making your advances delayed, because all you're doing when you get mad is getting stuck. Now, I'm not suggesting that we overlook our feelings of anger and disappointment and upset. I think that we have to look at those, we have to attend to those with compassion, and take a minute, take a day, take a week, take a month, even take as long as a year, but don't take a significant chunk out of your life to stay mad, to stay disappointed about something that happened as a failure for you. Because when that happens, we can't move on to the success that is your divine birthright. You were sent here to be successful, to be joy-filled, to be loved. That's what you were sent here to be. Well, we're doing a series right now. We're at the end of a 2-week series, a small, tiny series, on this book by the late, great Napoleon Hill, who wrote this book called You Can Work Your Own Miracles, and who was also better known for writing Think and Grow Rich. And when I talk about rich, I'm talking about way more than money, but I'm also talking about money. If you're visiting today, and you may have heard that scurrilous rumor that people in these kind of churches, these New Thought churches, are just all about money, want to get more money. You know, if you've heard that rumor, you'd be about 25% right, you know? Because truth be told, we like getting and giving money. We like that here. We don't apologize for it. We just enjoy that. We also like giving and getting hope. We like giving and getting love. We like giving and getting creativity in our life. We like all kinds of things that we call riches, including money and things. So if you hate money, you don't want one more red cent to cross your pocketbook, there's plenty in this theology that will give you a life of abundant love. and abundant peace, and abundant serenity, and abundant joy. So stick around. But we are going to talk a little bit about money today. When we started this sermon, this series 2 weeks ago, and by the way, Brenda and I are back from Canada. Had a great time bringing your love to those people there in Canada. That was a great thing. When I was here 2 weeks ago, in the first sermon, we talked about the power of a positive mindset. And by that, we're not talking about some perky thinking and talking. We're talking about that positive mindset that says, no matter what, the story has not ended yet. If I'm breathing, the story is not over, and I am not my story. I am much more than my story. It means that when we see that if we're off course and we're in some kind of a mess, we can get back on course. That's the kind of positive thinking, the positive mindset that we're talking about today. We're talking about legitimate. You know, when we are in trouble in our lives, and you know, we're in trouble sometimes in our lives, we want to attend to that trouble legitimately, authentically. We don't want to bury it. We don't want to act like it's not happening. We want to attend to it with compassion and with hope, saying it's going to change. It's not the end just yet. Well, the second thing that we talked about is that we have to live within change. We have to live the growth of change. We have to begin to embrace change. We all act like we like change. Oh, I'm okay with change. The truth is, we like the change we make. If we make a change, we are all, oh, I love change. I'm like flexible. I love this change. We don't like it when somebody else tells us we have to change. That's when we don't like. And that's the thing that we need to begin to embrace in our lives as well. And the last thing we talked about was our unseen guides, those unseen guides, which is a little odd to hear in a Science of Mind community. But what we begin to realize is we all have unseen guides. They lie within us. They lie within us. And it's okay to give them form and names even if you want, as long as we understand that all of our unseen guides are within each and every one of us. So today we're going to talk about 3 areas where the seeds of equivalent benefit, meaning equal benefit, are very commonly found. And the first one is struggle. Nobody wants struggle, but let me tell you that it is purposeful. All the struggles in our lives, the ones we've had in the past, the ones you might be having right now, and the ones that you have in the future are there in service to your soul. They are in service to your life's growth. Are they necessary? No, they're not necessary. They are not required. You are not required to struggle in order to have your soul grow. It's just that most of us do. Most of us do. But the truth is, if we would stop helping God, here's what struggle is. Your degree of struggle is absolutely corollary to your unwillingness or inability, because you don't know how to live God's operating system. And once we learned how to live God's operating system and we live it, meaning that when somebody else tells us we have to change, we don't go all ballistic on them. When we do those kinds of things, when we live within God's operating system, then the struggle isn't really there at all or as much. But since if you're like me, I like to get in there and help God, and so every time I help God, I get a little struggle going on in my life. Hill says this in this book. He says, struggle is the clever device through which nature, or God, forces us to expand, develop, progress, and become strong. That's what struggle does. Struggle is like our spinach. It makes us, we eat it, it makes us strong. And a lot of us are eating a lot of spinach these days. And what our work is to begin to look inside of that, not to run away from it, not to get mad about it, but to look inside of it for the equivalent benefit, the equal benefit that is there available for us in our life. Those of us who have really struggled for something in our life, whatever it is, maybe it's a career, maybe it's a relationship with a child. Once we struggle with that, we cherish it. Don't we cherish it? Whatever we struggle for, we cherish it even more. That's one of the seeds of equivalent benefit, is the ability to cherish that which we've struggled for in our life. Hill says in this book, he studied 500 successful people. And those 500 successful people, each and every one of them, except for a very few, struggled deeply in their life on their way to success. Now, I'm not just talking about financial success, but success in every sense of the word. They had to struggle for it. And the few who did not struggle were handed large amounts of inheritance or a path to success that was easy. Those people tended to have very fleeting success. So struggle is a very powerful part for us. And I invite you, and next time you find yourself in struggle, just take your attention away from it for just a moment to begin to look, where is the equivalent benefit here? Reverend Georgia says it's a promise. It's a spiritual truth that there's an equivalent benefit. Where is it? And begin to look for it. The first one then is struggle. The second area that is fertile ground is the area called mastering poverty. And Hill says in this book that poverty is the result of a negative condition of our mind. That's what poverty is, a result of a negative condition of our mind. So many of us think that we're poor because of the economy. We're poor because somebody did something to us. I have a little bit of that. I gave some money to a friend that I thought I was going to get back, and I still have a little irksome about it. I think out there that person is responsible for why things are tight in my life. That's not true. The economy, it's not true. How you grew up, it's not true. Whether you went to college or didn't go to college, it's not true. Poverty is the negative condition of our individualized mind. And when we can begin taking the attention and the focus off out there and begin putting the attention and the focus in here and learning God's abundant operating system, we will see major shifts in that area. But I'm not just talking about money. I'm going to come back to money, but he talks about 12 riches. And I'm going to ask you now, I'm going to tell you what these 12 riches are and what he asks us about in this book. And I'm going to ask you to do this right now, but if you get the book, then really take time to go and do it. It will begin to shift. I began to do this. Take an inventory as I read these 12 riches of life. How do you feel you're doing with them? What kind of attitude do you have around them? The first rich is a positive mental attitude. The second one is sound physical health. The third one is harmony in human relationships. The next one is freedom from fear. The next one is hope of future achievements. The next one is capacity for faith. The next one is willingness to share blessings. Ability to do your labor with love. Open mind on all subjects. Self-discipline. Capacity to understand. And last but not least, economic security. I know that I have some work to do in each of these areas in order to up my game, in order to be able to say, you know what, I want to be richer in each of these areas. So I'm going to take the time. I'm going to take 5 minutes every day and ask myself, where can I strengthen this in my life? To see if I can't begin to find some seeds of equivalent benefit in what he calls poverty. But I love that he used economic security. I love that phrase that he used because he's not talking about amounts of money. See, rich, even financial riches, isn't about amount of money. It's about what your amount of money is that makes you feel rich. And what we say here is the only purpose of money is freedom. That's what money is all about. A good friend of mine in this church, two good friends of mine, one of them went to the AT&T down at Pebble Beach and stayed for a week on the 15th fairway in Bing Crosby's old house. I'm telling you, I'd love to be able to do that. And what that takes is more money to have that kind of freedom. Another friend of mine went there and was not a caddy, but what were you, Sylvia? A marshal. She was a marshal there at the AT&T, so she met, the movie stars, and she hung out with the movie stars and all of that, and she hung out at Pebble Beach. Equally great experiences, needing different kinds of money, but having the rich of that kind of freedom. Do you see how this works? See, the truth is that 80% of all humanity lives on less than $10 a day. 80% of less than humanity lives on less than $10 a day. And most of those people would not consider themselves poor. I get a kick. Most of you, like me, we grew up in these little tiny houses with, 3 or 4 or 5 brothers and sisters, 1 bathroom. We were all up in a bedroom and maybe 2 or 3 of us in a bedroom. And nobody had 3 bathrooms or 2 bathrooms or a bath and a half. Have we ever heard of a bath and a half? No, nobody ever heard of that. And we didn't see ourselves as poor. So part of it is how we're beginning to look at ourselves. So here's a hint, and I got to speed it up here. So here's a hint of how you look for the seed of mental equivalent inside of mastering poverty. And one of it is to ask yourself, what is it I want to do with the money? What is it I want to do with it? See, we never talk about not having money or money not being spiritual here because we believe that money is freedom. So if what you want money for is to have more prestige in the world, that is not a bad thing. If you want to have a house so that you can feel better about yourself in a neighborhood that you want to have it in, that is not a bad thing. Don't make it a bad thing. But keep in mind that if what you want is prestige, there are other ways to get it in addition to the house on a she block. Do you see how that works? It could be from many, many different kinds of things. Maybe what you want is, I don't know what you want. Whatever it is you want, begin to ask yourself why it is that you want it. And then notice, maybe it's adventure. Maybe what you really want is adventure through travel. And you'd like to go on a world cruise, or you'd like to go somewhere because that feels adventurous to you. Nothing wrong with that. Don't make it bad. Make it great. Go do it. Set it as a goal and go. But until you go there, know that you are rich in adventure in a number of different ways. And begin to look for those ways inside of your life. Well, I have to move on. So we're going to move on here to the final area, and the final area is failure. There is no richer ground for finding the seed of equivalent benefit than inside of your failure. All failure is purposeful. Say that with me. All failure is purposeful. It produces clues for you to move forward. But unfortunately, too often we get heartsick from our failures. We get heartsick and we stop trying. You can't stop trying. You have to move ahead. The seed for equivalent benefit is right inside that particular failure. How many people here use Post-its? I know you all do. Don't raise your hands. Okay. Many of you might know that Post-its was actually a huge failure. The scientist who worked for 3M in their research department was trying to develop a glue for airplane wings. And he was such a dismal failure because the glue he developed could not stick to anything. And so they fired him. But his secretary got a hold of the glue and found out that she could put documents on top of documents that temporarily and take them off. And 3M made millions and millions of dollars off this guy's failure. Now, I'd like to say they hired him back and gave him a bonus, but they didn't. But you see how that works. Alexander Graham Bell, he did not set out to develop the telephone. He did set out to have a hearing aid for his wife who was hard of hearing. He failed dismally at the hearing aid, but he developed the telephone for us. But the one I love the best is a guy named Clarence Sanders. Clarence Sanders was a retail clerk, and he hated being a retail clerk. This was years and years ago. And years ago, you'd go to the general store, and you would have your list, and you would tell the guy what you wanted. Well, he hated it because people would get there, and if they didn't have a list, they would stand there, and they would say, well, you know, and he'd be standing there waiting for them to make up their mind. Now, I have sympathy. I'm like this guy. I'm like Clarence Sanders because every time I go to a subway to get a sandwich, I can guarantee I will stand behind the person who will look at that glass and look at that glass and look at that glass. There are only 10 things they could have, you know. And then people are waiting. I'm waiting. Everybody's waiting. They don't know whether they want lettuce or olives or whatever they want on there. And I'm ready to strangle them. Well, Clarence was too. Ruined their whole lunch. Clarence couldn't stand it either. So he closed that store and he opened a store that is now, that had all of the shelves out there and people could go and put things in their own bags and own boxes. And that was the beginning. It's called the Piggly Wiggly. And the Piggly Wiggly was the first of its kind of stores that we see now when we go to a grocery store. He made, from his failure as a retail clerk, he found the seed of equivalent benefit. And from that seed, he made $4 million in 4 years. The first 4 years, the Piggly Wiggly was open. And saved himself a whole lot of heartache in the same time. There's so much more in this book, but I want to tell you, the last thing I want to tell you about failure is this. Every failure is purposeful. Hill has listed 57 failures that he went through. And I went through all those 57 failures and sat there in just maybe 2 minutes of contemplation on each one. Maybe even 30 seconds of contemplation on each of the 57 failures. And I found out that some of those failures were also my failures. And that I could begin to do some real work to shift my willingness to be successful here in Sacramento at CSA if I would study these 57 failures. So what I have done for you is I have copied enough for everybody of the 57 failures. They're out there. And so I invite you to pick one up on your way out. I invite you really to go in the bookstore and get the book because lots of good stories in there. There's lots of good stuff in there. But if you can't get the book today, get the 57 failures and sit with them. Who wants to come to church and get a list of failures? Nobody does. But the truth is, it can help us. It can help us by looking at somebody else. What can I do about it? Here's what you can do about it. Some things that will come to you immediately when you look at those 57 failures. You'll say, oh, I'm doing that. And you will shift automatically. You won't have to do anything. God will take care of it for you. Other things won't be so clear, but you know that you're doing one of those 57 failures. Practitioners in the house, please stand up. See, you contact one of these people, and you say, I have got a failure that I can't figure out how to get rid of. And you can sit down now. And you go to those people, and you ask them, and they'll give you a hand. All right, let's take this message into prayer so we can get some more music going here. So if you just go within for a moment and know that God is an awesome God. So good to us. I simply anchor my consciousness in knowing that it is not God and me, but God as me. And as I anchor myself in that consciousness, I stand up straighter. I sit up straighter. I know that I am attached to the divine mind. I am open to it. I am receptive. Give me the information. I'm open, God. Give me the information. Throw it here. I'm open. Knowing that there is only one presence and one power. I give thanks for this. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.